Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you for checking out my Baldur's Gate 3 Complete Beginner's Guide. This is aimed at people who are complete beginners to Baldur's Gate 3. If you're someone with more intermediate knowledge, you might still find something in there that's helpful to you. Let me know in the comments below. Just to note, this has been created based on the early access version of the game, with some information dotted in from the recent updates provided by Larian Studios and their streams in the lead up to full release. Information on aspects like crafting is currently limited, so there won't be deep dives into that. I'll be doing a separate video on release. This is intended to be a beginner level introduction and breakdown of the game systems. If you're looking for more in-depth information, please consider subscribing to help me hit that 500 sub goal, and you'll see my future breakdowns on crafting and class builds on full release. To start off, and better understand classes and how to make sense of the game's systems, let's start by explaining how the game decides on the outcome of your actions in the world, and what increases your chance of success, or in some cases, decreases them. Baldur's Gate 3 runs on 5th edition D&D rules, with tweaks here and there to improve the quality of life. Unlike D&D, a video game like Baldur's Gate 3 has certain parameters, so most of these changes have been made to fit within the scope of the game. In Baldur's Gate 3, when you attempt to swing a sword, persuade an NPC, or complete a skill check, like picking the lock to a door, you'll roll a chance to succeed, which is often displayed by a 20-sided dice, or a d20. Not all of the skill checks you do will show you this roll, and that's to help from cluttering the screen. For example, when you swing a sword at an enemy, you'll see whether you hit or miss, and the damage you do, rather than the actual roll of the dice, which happen in the background. So what determines if you succeed or fail? In melee combat, your success or failure is determined by the enemy's armor class, or AC, and your proficiency with weapon of your choice, and your strength or dexterity modifier. Your roll and proficiencies are added together, and whether you hit is based on the AC. The higher the AC, the harder it'll be for you to hit them. Damage is only applied as you'd expect to rolls that are successful. Now, the game will do all these checks for you, so this isn't something you have to keep track of every second of every minute of the game. But it's important to understand where your proficiencies are, because if you're using items you're not proficient in, your chances of hitting are going to be lower. In combat, your chance to hit will be presented to you as a percentage chance to hit, and at a quick glance, you can check the amount of damage you'll do on a scale. When performing various skill checks, such as attempting to deceive or persuade a character, your roll is measured against the DC, or difficulty class. In dialogue, these rolls are shown, and you'll see the difficulty class you need to roll in order to succeed. Your proficiencies will also be shown, and based on your party, you may be able to further augment your roll to increase chances of success, such as through the use of bardic inspiration. It's worth remembering that rolling a 1 will always fail, also known as a critical failure, even if you have proficiencies to increase the roll to beat the DC. And a 20 will always be a success, and in the case of combat, a critical hit. Now, if you're new to D&D and these types of systems, your first question is, how do you become proficient, and what does that mean? Proficiency, like in life, comes from practice and your character's background. If you start the game as a barbarian, you'd expect to have strength and proficiency with weapons. If you start as a wizard, you'd expect increased intelligence from how your character has grown and developed in the world up until the point where you take control. During your character creation, you'll see both your race and class selection give you various proficiencies. These are completely at your preference and based on how you intend to play the game. These choices can be significant or less so. Baldur's Gate 3 will release with 3 difficulty levels: a story-based difficulty, which is more for the narrative players who don't want to focus too much on combat and just want to enjoy the story; a normal mode, which will bring a balance to combat that will challenge you in parts, but forgive you for mistakes, and any character builds that are less efficient; and finally, tactician mode, which will increase combat difficulty in a number of ways, including increasing enemy density, increasing enemy options. For example, an archer may have fire arrows in their kit as well as regular arrows, and make some environmental changes such as putting exploding barrels in key areas. If you're looking for a great story-based experience and combat isn't a priority interest for you, then you won't need to worry about your proficiencies as much, but it's still something to keep in mind as you're building your character and how you intend to play the game. If you're wanting to play the game as a stealthy rogue and you're not too interested in combat, but you want to enjoy that stealth outside of it, then you want to look for those proficiencies and not just ignore them. Building a well-rounded party should still be considered in your options, as it'll make you play through the game a lot smoother. You'll find your starting proficiencies here, when selecting a race, and along here when you're selecting your class. You'll also want to take note of your ability scores here. Now you can hover over each of these to further expand what they do, but let's quickly break them down. Strength, as you'd expect, impacts your ability to perform athletic tasks, increases your jump distance, how much you can carry, and your effectiveness with melee weapons. Dexterity is for those with more finesse than brute strength. This has an impact on your armor class, which determines how easy it is to hit you, your effectiveness with ranged weapons, as well as some melee weapons as well. Dexterity also impacts your initiative, which dictates who moves first during a combat encounter. Dexterity impacts skill checks with acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth. Now let's take a quick moment and hang on this description of dexterity, so I can explain why having 15 points in dexterity is giving you a +2 to ability checks instead of more. Gaining points on ability checks from your skills begins at a baseline of 10. So all your skills start at 10, your character's background, race, class, then kind of increase and decrease this number until you get the numbers you're looking at now. You can imagine having dexterity at level 10 means your character has a normal amount of reflexes. They're not going to be winning competitions, but they're not going to be unable to catch a ball coming their way. Now if they have 12 dexterity, they gain +1 to ability checks. So they're slightly more skilled and gain a bonus to rolls in the game. If we go the other way, and they have 8, they get a -1 to ability checks because they're worse than normal at this skill. It's important to remember that when you upgrade any of your ability scores, you only gain an extra point on ability checks every 2 levels that go into that point. At 14 you get a +2, and at 16 a +3. At 18 you get a +4. As you can see from the screen, having 15 dexterity doesn't add anything over 14 because you still only gain the +2. So when you're adding the scores throughout the game, you want to be looking, where you're actually going to put those points. What are you going to gain? If you're going to be sitting on 15 points for the rest of the game and that's where it's going to sit, you may as well be at 14. Again, probably more something for the min-maxes, but just so you guys are aware. Constitution is a staple in most RPGs and impacts your hit point maximum. If you've played any RPGs before, you probably recognize that one. Intelligence impacts your spellcasting for wizards. Wisdom assists with your spellcasting for the cleric, druid, and ranger classes. And finally, charisma influences character abilities to interact with the world, in terms of influencing trader prices and generally assisting with some dialogue encounters. However, there are some proficiencies which will assist with that. Charisma is also the ability stat that improves spells for bards, sorcerers, and warlocks. So that's a hell of a lot of information to take in, right? Check for this star when selecting a class and it'll show you which stat you should really be prioritizing if you're not too sure. Now, I hope that's given you a bit of a grasp on proficiencies. Let's finally talk into them and break it down. Bet you thought we'd get here a bit sooner, hey? Proficiencies are related to your class and race. It's entirely up to you if you want to choose a class and race for their proficiencies or for their aesthetic. It's completely fine. This is ultimately how you want to play the game. If you're planning to play on a harder difficulty, you should consider who you're planning to have in your party and how they will benefit each other. Within Baldur's Gate 3, your party max size is 4. There's no need to have 4 members of your party all with skills and deception when you could spread out your proficiencies and have a well-rounded party. A good party has well-rounded skills for uses in different scenarios. It will also have a mix of skills to use to aid in different situations, whether you have a cleric to heal the party, damage dealer to pick off targets, and a tank to keep the enemy focus. Based on your chosen difficulty, this will become more or less important. Let's jump into a race and class breakdown. I won't be going in depth into classes. There'll be 12 available at release, and there's a total of 46 subclasses. Far too much to break down in detail for this video, which is already going to be quite lengthy. In terms of races, your race selection should be something you consider carefully. To our knowledge, you are unable to change your race after the game starts, and you would have to start an entire new game to change your race. We believe this is the case because there are likely a lot of unique dialogue options throughout the world based on your race. There are also some based on your class, but your race-specific dialogue options may have an impact on the overall story as you progress. Your race selection will open up unique dialogue options throughout the game, and will likely impact how you're approached by NPCs throughout the world in various ways. Some races also have sub-races available to them, which impact on their proficiencies and the bonuses they provide too. The available races at release are your elf, human, a cheeky mix of both, a half-elf, which, by the way, was apparently the most popular in early access, tieflings who come from the hells and have bloodlines drawn from archdevils, Githyanki, who are warriors in the astral planes, your halflings, gnomes and dwarves, your drow, and finally 2 new races available at release which haven't been available in early release, or early access rather, the half-orc and dragonborn. When building your character, take time to check out who you want to play as. If you're doing it just for aesthetics and to roleplay, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to worry too much. If you're doing the harder difficulties, have a look at the benefits they provide and their sub-races and how you're planning to build your class. Now, I'm recording this after I was almost finished editing the video because somehow I forgot to mention your origin characters. Origin characters are characters that come into the world with pre-existing relationships, pre-existing baggage in a lot of cases, and their own unique storylines. These are storylines you can experience without picking an origin character. Origin characters are many of the companions you meet throughout the game. Choosing to play as one is not a necessity to hear about and learn about their stories, but you'll get a different perspective because you'll know more information. You'll know if you go in as your own character and you have to then fish that information from your companion. All of the origin characters minus 1 have their races selected. The character that doesn't have their race selected is the Dark Urge, which is a fully customizable character that enters the game with a backstory that's kind of unknown to that character itself. They have dark and quite violent urges. You don't have to give in to them, as I understand, and it looks to be a very unique standalone story. You can't meet the Dark Urge if you don't choose to play as the Dark Urge. This is a character you have to play to experience their storyline. Here is just a quick snippet from a recent panel showing off this character, with some very unique dialogue that you wouldn't get with your own custom character or any of the other origin characters.
You drink in the pungent corpse. Since you awoke on the ship, your mind has been cold and empty, but something stirs. With your hands close to this body, you know nothing of why, but find a half smile flittering across your face.
I don't know about you guys, but I am keen to experience this storyline. This is going to be my Murder Hobo playthrough for sure, but I don't know. It's going to be unique. I love that there is just this completely separate character who has his own entire narration, everything just completely separate to him. When it comes to the other characters, the other companions, you can learn about their stories as you play through the game, and you will meet them as you play through the game. So it's up to you if you decide to party up with them, learn more about their stories, or choose one and play it through as that character. Again, this is completely player preference. You don't have to pick a origin character. You're not missing out on a ton if you don't select an origin character because, like I said, you will get to experience some of their storylines. Personally, for me, I want to go into this world as a character without baggage. I want to come into this world, experience the story as if I'd never met anyone without any pre-existing things holding me back or pulling me forward. But on extra playthroughs, I'm going to be keen to learn more about these characters. If I don't experience their full story because I piss them off and they don't have a good relationship with me, I can go back in on another playthrough and experience something from their perspective, roleplay as that character. You could take that character completely off the rails. I think they'll be really fun experiences. And of course, if you want to go into the world with a backstory, these characters are great. They're handcrafted. The storylines look really interesting. They are great characters to interact with in the main game. So I think playing as them is going to be fantastic. We haven't had the chance to play as them in the early access. They've only been companions. Now, to our knowledge, origin characters' races are locked. However, there's also been mention of the ability to respec and re-roll their classes. I'm not sure exactly what this will look like. However, some of the origin classes' stories are closely linked to their starting class. For example, Gale being a wizard is quite important to his story. Now, within the game, you can multi-class. So my assumption is that Gale will be forced to have at least partial wizard class. And then maybe you can take him off as a fighter as well, but that he will need some points as a wizard for him to function in the game. This completely remains to be seen. Larian Studios, I'm sure, did confirm that you can respec the companions. However, we're not sure how that will work in relation to their stories. All right, on to classes. I'd say this is your key decision, but fear not. If you make a decision and decide 10, 20, 30 hours into the game, God, I'd wish I'd chosen something different. There is an NPC that you meet that can change this for you. This NPC you meet pretty early on in Act 1. If you've played the early access, you may already know who this is. If you happen to miss them though, I've heard that they will join your camp later in the game. So don't hesitate to run with a class because you think it'll be fun. If it turns out it's not quite for you, you can always alter this later in the game. Alright, let's do this. Let's break down these classes. Remember, I'm not going to go super in-depth, just to give you a brief overview of what they are. Again, if you're familiar with RPGs, D&D, you may already know this information and feel free to skip ahead. Now you've got your paladins. Proficient in any weapon and any armor type, paladins can dish out great single target damage and can be great tanks when wearing their heaviest armor. Remember, charisma is their spellcasting stat, so they can be great for leading the parties and dialogue options. They have strong healing with lay on hands. They're not a full caster, and you won't have as many spells as their sister religion style class, the cleric, but they have great fighting options. If you want to be a holy knight striking fear into the heretic, this could be the class for you. If you choose to be a heretic yourself and break your oath, however, as a paladin, you might find a fun interaction waiting for you at full release. Paladins choose an oath to follow, which each provide their own unique benefit. Now, the ranger. I'm curious to see if anyone goes for a Legolas cosplay with this one, but we'll see. Efficient in light and medium armor and all weapon types, rangers are often your damage dealers in the party. They can be ranged focus, ranger, ranged. You'd kind of expect that. But you do have some solid melee options. You're not forced into that. And you can become more of a roguelike character, depending on your subclass. Heavy armor can also be utilized with specific subclasses available to the ranger. And pet options open up this class as the game progresses, allowing you to have a little fun companion that can be quite handy in combat. Alright, your wizard. I don't think this one needs much explanation. I think everyone knows what a wizard is, but let's jump in. Wizards have no armor proficiency, and they're only proficient with daggers, darts, quarterstaffs, slings, and crossbows. But honestly, if you're using these, something's not gone to plan. This is a spellcaster, as you'd expect, and wizards in particular have access to the largest range of spell options, with the capacity to add to those through the game, making you a master of pretty much any situation. Spells do need to be prepared and can't be swapped out on the fly, but if you can size up a situation before diving in, you can come as a force to be reckoned with. Alright, the sister to the wizard, the sorcerer. Sorcerers may sound like wizards, but actually play pretty differently, and may be worth considering if you're looking at playing a caster. Similarly, they have no armor proficiency and limited melee weapon options. Sorcerers are natural spellcasters, where wizards are schooled and researched in their magics. Sorcerers gain access to sorcery points and can augment their spells, giving them extra range, allowing single target spells to hit multiple enemies, and much more. This is called metamagic and can really increase your potency as a spellcaster. I'd highly recommend choosing wild magic on your sorcerers if you like a bit of chaos in your gameplay. Wild magic can cause random effects to happen during some of your casts, which can just be a hell of a lot of fun. Alright, moving on to warlocks. Warlocks are bound by a pact to an all-powerful being. Whether hellish or eldritch in nature, warlock's subclass dictates their loyalty to the being that provides them with their unique magic. They have proficiency in light armor and simple weapons. Warlocks gain access to some spells as they level up, meaning their options are limited, but they have some interesting and unique options, and may gain access to spells that wizards also utilize. Warlocks will have less spell slots than a wizard, but have the unique cantrip Eldritch Blast, which can be upgraded as they gain in levels. Alright, everyone's favorite daddy druid, Halsin. Well, you can't play as Halsin, but you could play as his buddy. If you haven't seen the panel from Hell Showcase, you won't get that one, and that's okay. Maybe for the best. Druids can fit in many playstyles. They use light and medium armor, shields, and a good number of weapons. They can fit many roles. They excel with support spells, the ability to control the battlefield. Their spells are swapped out of combat. They have a strong affinity for nature and natural forces. They can utilize heals and buffs to the party. They also have the ability to change form. You can become a bear, wolf, and many other animals, all with their unique abilities. Okay, our second holy class, the cleric. The cleric is primarily a spellcaster. The cleric is almost always worth having in your party to protect that rogue who's kind of gone astray into the backline without support, or to bolster the frontline tank and keep the enemy at bay. Clerics represent the god that they worship, wielding strong divine magics. You don't have to use this for good, by the way. Clerics can take an evil path if they choose to. Clerics can use light and medium armor and have base weapon proficiency. They have access to a lot of support and enemy debuff spells and are great at keeping the party alive and powerful in combat. If you're new or experienced, I'd highly recommend bringing a cleric along. Okay, maybe my favorite class, the humble bard. Bards are casters proficient in light armor, a number of weapons, and of course, musical instruments. As a tip, when playing music in settlements, NPCs will often gather around you, giving your more unscrupulous allies time to slip in undetected for all kinds of thieving. Or maybe you just want to entertain and pick up a few gold pieces along the way. Bards learn spells as they level, meaning you won't have a long spell list as a cleric or druid, so your choices are important and limited. They'll have many support spells and healing options as well. Bards also have the unique ability to inspire their party members, giving them an extra d6 roll to an ability and skill check. Bards can also viciously mock their enemies, slinging insults that impact the enemy's ability to hit your allies. Honestly, some of my favorite voice lines are from Vicious Mockery. These are great and absolutely worth playing for. Bards are natural performers and can be great conversationalists when you need to sweet talk your way through the front door. Oh, will the classes ever end? Alright, we have the fighter. The fighter's a martial class. They have access to all weapons and armors. They can be tanks, having access to their own self-heal, and can also be great damage dealers with their action surge ability, giving them an extra action point for quick burst damage. Fighters can be more strength or dexterity based. You're not limited in that respect. Meaning if you'd like to, you can go down the ranged and light weaponry path. Fighters choose the fighting style and class selection, increasing their proficiency with certain weapons, armor, or particular fighting styles like dual wielding. On to the mighty barbarian. Barbarians are absolute monsters. They are great damage dealers, strong tanks, and be good scouts for the party as well. They have unique rage ability, which increases the melee damage they dish out while also decreasing the damage they take in. Barbarians often prefer to be unarmored, which can increase their armor class. Barbarians often have the most HP in a party. You won't be going ranged or using spells with this class, but you'll be breaking the enemy apart, and you can throw items in your environment or even enemies at one another for fun, depending on their size, of course. Alright, just 2 more to go. Rogues are your dexterity based troublemakers. They have proficiency in sleight of hand and stealth checks. While the party are in town trading, you'll often see your rogue kind of sneaking into the back of the shop and pilfering some goods. Rogues can be strong melee and ranged characters. Rogues are a very versatile class when it comes to their use of weaponry, but often excel from the shadows, being able to carefully select their targets for significant damage. They gain more mobility options with their bonus actions, allowing them to disengage and engage with more success. Alright, and our last class has not been available in early access. That is the Monk. Monks are the most mobile class in the game. They utilize key points as their resource and are great skirmishers within a party, moving swiftly and preferring to be unarmored and sometimes unarmed. Monks can be strong melee combatants with their fists, as their dexterity modifier will increase their potency with both their armor class and unarmed attacks. Monks can also deflect missiles back to enemies and attack multiple times per turn with the use of their key points. When you're creating a class, you'll select skills and abilities to alter your proficiencies. And of course, you'll be able to design the look of your character, including their eye and hair color, their body build, and more. This has been expanded even further at full release than what is available to me here in early access. If you're someone that loves fine-tuning the look of the character they play in an RPG, you're going to have great fun with this character selection screen. It is just absolutely amazing the depth they've included here, including heterochromia, the 2 different eye colors, and I believe it's pronounced vitiligo, which is that skin condition seen here. Now finally, as we've talked about classes, I'll quickly talk about leveling here to help you understand how your class improves through the game. As you play, find new locations, complete quests, and succeed in combat, you'll gain experience, allowing you to increase in level. In Baldur's Gate 3, the level cap is 12. Based on your class and race, at each level you will gain increased stats, and in some cases, new abilities. This really does come down to the class, and by the time you hit level 12, 2 fighters, for example, could play completely differently based on their choices. Leveling also gives the opportunity for selecting subclasses, which again, depending on your class, fighters, for example, can become arcane knights, allowing them some more options for spell casting, or can continue to lean into the martial arts, further mastering melee combat abilities and making them hell to be near for enemies. Oh, alright, 20 minutes of just non-stop talking. Do you need a break after that? Go grab yourself a drink, subscribe really quick, and let's jump into explanations of combat. Now, the game does a decent job of guiding you into combat early on, teaching the basics so you can walk before you run. But to get you up to speed, let's dive into some of what this looks like. Combat in Baldur's Gate 3 is turn-based. We previously touched on initiative. This rolls when the party enters combat and it determines your turn order. If you have two characters next to each other in the turn order, they can take their turns together, giving you a bit more flexibility in the strategy. It's important to consider if your party is split up. Only those in range and sight of enemies will enter combat at the start of an encounter, and those away from the area will move at a normal pace. This can be used to your advantage, as time in combat will be frozen, allowing your party members outside of combat to take high ground positions if available, or run from whatever they were doing to come and join you in the fight before things actually get rolling. If your party aren't first in the initiative order, however, the enemies will begin taking their turns. So if your wizard has walked into a room full of 5 people and they all have a turn before your wizard does, they're gonna be in a bit of trouble, which is why you might want to stick together. Any party members who enter combat late will also have their turns placed pretty late in the order, if not at the very end, but may be able to enter combat if unseen through the use of an action, like so. Now, your turns are broken down into a few select actions which you can complete in any order. Your movement. Some races have more than others, and some abilities and actions can provide you with more. This is shown through the white line as you move your cursor around the environment, turning red when you have no movement to use. Your primary action, represented by this green dot. Generally, everyone gets a single action, but some classes can have 2 at specific times using class-specific abilities. And finally, your bonus action, which allows you to perform some specific feats adjacent to your main action for the round and separate to your movement. Your main action can be used to extend your movement, should you not be in range or need to dash away from a fight. For your spellcasters, you'll also have your spell slots, shown above your abilities. Spell slots for most classes replenish after a long rest, and have limited uses until you do rest. Missing a spell still uses a spell slot, so aim wisely and hope luck is on your side. Certain classes have their own specific resources as well. I won't detail all of these now, you'll pick that up as you pick your classes. If you need to know which resource a certain action will use, you can hover over these in your action bar, and the information is shown here. If you're ever unsure, say you've used your movement and your main action, and you want to know what your bonus action can do for you, click on the icon. This will showcase what these actions or bonus actions or spell slots relate to. Now that we have a basic understanding of turns and how combat plays out, let's explain a few more key points to round this out. Characters can have passives and reactions, the most common passive being an attack of opportunity. This is if you're in melee range of an enemy and decide to leave this by moving, they may get a free attack on your character even though it's your turn. Your character will also have this against enemies themselves. Your reactions and passives can be found here and within your character menu, and can be toggled on and off or set to ask for being triggered. You should always leave attack of opportunity on. You leave the threatened area of an enemy by disengaging, but this takes your action to do, so there's a bit of give and take. Status effects. Whether it's poison, having the blessing of an ally, or finding yourself irresistibly charmed towards another, status effects show the impacts of a spell and ailment caused by other characters. There are a ton of ways a status effect can be inflicted upon you, or ways in which your party can inflict them on others. The easiest and most common will be through spellcasting, and you'll often see clerics placing effects often referred to as buffs or boons to other party members. These can be positive or negative in nature, and there are far too many to count. If you check the description of your spells, they will explain what effect they have, if they have one, and the event of a spell that impacts enemies negatively, it will detail what type of saving throws that enemy will need to make to negate the effect. For example, the spell Charm person has a wisdom save, meaning when you cast a spell on a character, they will attempt to negate this effect through their own roll, utilizing their wisdom stat. Characters with high wisdom will have a greater chance of remaining unaffected. Effects can have a variety of impacts on your party and the enemy, most often broken down into damage over time effects, like poison or burning, buffs to your party, like Bless, which gives those affected an additional d6 roll, meaning on top of the roll for 20 they do, their proficiency roll, they gain an additional roll of a 6-sided die. There are often significant debuffs you can cast on enemies, slowing them, halting their movement entirely, or causing them to fall asleep. These are just a number of small ones that we're discussing. Every status effect on Baldur's Gate would require its own video. Remember to check your effects as you're playing the game, and if a spell is cast on you that's successful, check the UI here for whether you've been impacted, or you can right-click, examine an enemy, and it will show you the list of debuffs and statuses that are currently affecting that player. Another thing to consider in combat is your environment. The environment which you fight can be your greatest ally or your biggest nightmare. Check for traps, check for hazards, and use these to your advantage. Vines can hold allies and enemies alike in place. Patches of burning ground can cause damage over time, and in some cases, a well-executed trap can completely wipe out enemies, turning the tide entirely in your favor. At times, combat can take place very quickly. If you look away for a moment and miss a crucial incident of battle, you can check the log on the right of the screen. This provides a breakdown of all events occurring and gives you more insight into why an attack may have hit or missed, and why an effect may have succeeded or failed. In this example here, this gnome used the rush attack against my party. We can see the DC he needed to hit, how he has hit this, and then the saving throw my party completed to negate the effect of the ability. So this ability had the opportunity to put my party member offside. That didn't quite take effect because they passed the saving throw. However, they did take damage because the hit did succeed. Rolls for damage and rolls for status effects are separate. However, the roll to land the attack must be successful for the attack and effect roll to occur. You can't land a status effect on a missed attack, just like you won't land damage. I hope we're appreciating why all these rolls happen out of sight, by the way. It's always helpful that you can go back and check, however, if you're unsure about what's going on. If you find you're missing a ton of your attacks, it may be worth checking the log to determine if a specific stat you're rolling is too low or whether you've misinterpreted a proficiency. Baldur's Gate 3 does a great job of easing you into that combat. My final reminder is to save regularly. Otherwise, you might find yourself needing to rerun multiple fights if you fail to a challenging foe in the future. Alright, our final point on combat is talking about items. As you kill, loot, and barter your way through the world, you'll come across items everywhere. Depending on how frugal you want to be, you can pack yourself full like a mule and sell everything you can, or just take what you need. This is where you need to keep your proficiencies in mind. You might find some nice, shiny armor, but you're a mage. And if it's heavy armor, you won't be wearing it, especially not effectively. This is another example of why a balanced party benefits everyone. A balanced party will be able to make use of most items you find, and will also have less trouble kind of sharing those around. If you find heavy armor, look, and you're a mage, it's going to go to the paladin. You don't need to argue that point. And then when you find a staff or some robes or a headpiece that increases your intelligence, well, the paladin's probably going to give that one to you. Bit of tit for tat. As the game progresses, you'll begin to find more items with unique effects. We've only scratched the surface of this in early access. This item, for example, provides an additional bonus action when the parameters are met, and this necklace provides an ability to talk to the dead. Items can really support and in some cases define how you build your character. You'll want to look for items that benefit your character though. Finding an item that provides strength will generally be best in your barbarian, while a helm that provides intelligence may be best suited to your wizard. You should always look at what's available, what benefits it will provide to you, and what you may have to sacrifice. As a quick little tip here, bring a backpack with you in inventory. You can always keep certain items organized into this backpack so you don't lose track of them, to be pulled out and used as needed. You won't have them immediately if you're pulled into combat suddenly, but you also probably won't be taking time to talk to the dead in the middle of combat. This can be a great way to keep your arsenal broad while continuing to use the pieces that keep you alive. As a quick note, you can't talk to every dead character you come across, but you're often limited in what you can ask them, but it can be a great source of information. I'll be keeping this necklace with me if I don't have a party member that can talk to the dead, just in case I need to whip it out if I come across an interesting scene. And I somehow forgot to touch on saving throws. When your character reaches 0 HP, they go into a downed state, and then each turn they roll a saving throw. If they're successful, after 3 turns they will stand up and rejoin the fight with 1 HP. If they fail 3 times, that character is dead. Now, characters can be revived in a number of ways, so you don't have to worry too much about that, but your characters can also use the help option to pick up a downed character earlier than when they would get up from their saving throws. If a character is down, you can also throw a health potion at them to bring them up quickly. Whew, almost half an hour in. If you've made it this far, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Please do like the video and leave me a comment down below. What have you found most helpful here? Is there anything you're curious about? Any questions you have? I try to address every comment I can, so leave me one. Alright, let's talk about dialogue, decision making, and relationships. Baldur's Gate is a massive narrative experience, with the developers toting more than 170 hours of cutscenes within the game, likely due to the massive scope of diverging paths you can take. Characters will react differently based on your race, and at times will also respond and react to your decisions throughout the game in different ways. Choosing to help one NPC or forsake another can have lasting consequences throughout the game. Not every choice you make will have an ongoing impact, and it remains to be seen what big narrative decisions will be, but you should always consider how your actions impact on not just the narrative, but your party. In Baldur's Gate, your party members will have views based on your actions and decisions you make. You'll be notified with an approval or disapproval notification when you make a statement, decision, or action that impacts on the relationships you're building with your party. Apparently, this does matter quite heavily. I've heard that party members can up and leave, which it fits. If you're running through massacring entire villages and your cleric doesn't like that, I don't think they're going to stick around. Other party members, though, might just join you for that ride. Now, there's not a lot to say about what you should and shouldn't do when it comes to your dialogue, as this is all largely personal preference. I'm not going to tell you you need to be a good person in this game, because you don't, and that is the beauty of Baldur's Gate 3. There is no right decision to make. As you move through the world, you should make decisions based on how you want to play the story. Be prepared to roll with the punches. I think that is the best way to progress. However, if something happens and you're really worried about a relationship with NPC, you can always just revert to a previous save. Again, save frequently. It's worth noting again, NPCs in the world, just like your party members, will remember your actions. If you walk into a town, execute half the people there, and expect to be friendly with those that remain, you're unlikely to find much support. If you try to steal from a merchant, you're likely to find yourself in an argument if they catch you, behind bars, or in a fight. And leaving the area isn't going to wipe their memory of your crimes. They're going to remember as soon as you walk back in the door. Personally, I'll be doing a good playthrough when I start. I'll then be doing an evil playthrough, and likely a complete Scorched Earth Murder Hobo style playthrough, just to name a few. You alone will need to make decisions on what risks you're willing to take. Are you willing to deceive an NPC to gain a slight advantage when you may burn bridges with them in the future? This type of narrative, good and evil type gameplay is exactly what you're looking for. There is no right or wrong answer, just roll with it. A quick tip for you, if you're playing solo, the character you're piloting as you walk around the world will often be the one that's addressed if you happen to walk into a group of NPCs that engage you. So lead with the character you'd prefer to do the talking. Some dialogue options will allow you to exit and enter with another character, but if you walk into a room and they want to fight, they're going to talk to the person that you're piloting before they talk with anyone else. Something else to consider when attempting to intimidate, persuade, or deceive characters in the world is that you won't know the difficulty class of this interaction until you've chosen to attempt it. You can, however, look at your proficiencies before selecting, if you're looking to choose the one that meets your proficiency bonus well. There are generally multiple solutions to a problem you're faced with. At times, dialogue choices can entirely save you from combat, or send you straight into it without notice. Successfully persuading characters can save you time in gathering information if you can encourage them correctly, but you'll often find multiple ways to get through to the same goal should you fail. So don't worry if you try to persuade someone and fail, there's likely another way to get exactly what you're after. Don't be afraid to fail in Baldur's Gate 3. A dialogue encounter going south isn't a sign of failure, but a different path for your party to take. If you really are concerned about a certain relationship, however, go for the save. Go for the save and then reload if you are very concerned about that. Now, if you ever find yourself lost or haven't played in a while and you've forgotten where you left off when you come back to the game, pressing J will open your journal, giving you a rundown of all your current quests, including past actions, an indication of what you have to do next, as well as a breakdown of your companions and the discussions you've had with them. You can also check your character screens to see where they sit in terms of their relationship with you. If they're significantly negative, you might be at risk of losing that party member. However, on the opposite side, if they're significantly positive, you might be close to romancing that character if that's what you want. Romancing characters is an option in this game. Exactly what that will look like in total, not exactly sure. In the recent panel from Hell, they seem to allude to a bear sex scene, but I get the sense that most of this is supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, and I doubt there's going to be a lot of gratuitous nudity, but hey, that remains to be seen. Now, when you're out navigating the world, you will find waypoints allowing you to fast travel. Always look out for these and make sure you grab them as you go near them. If you forget to click on one as you go past, you'll have to walk back there yourself. It's always good to get fast travel, allowing you to go back to towns pretty quickly so you can hand in quests or go to sell things. Now, not every single quest may guide you easily on a path. Generally, you'll have an indicator like this one on your map for main quests. I doubt you'll ever be stuck trying to find where your main quest is, but some side quests you might need to dig into the journal to check what step you are up to, as this may not always be highlighted. Now, when you're traveling the world, your characters are always scanning their environment and doing perception checks. Another reason we don't see every single roll. It's starting to add up. This is automatic, whereas in tabletop D&D you need to actively state this when you're searching for something that isn't obvious. The benefit of this in Baldur's Gate is that you'll see your character complete a check with this note over their head. In the event they fail, bring your other party members to the same location, as every character is able to complete their own check. Now, characters only get one attempt at a perception check, so if you see a character fail, you can't walk back and forth over the same area until they succeed. Look, if they fail to notice a big red button, they fail to notice a big red button, and that's a damn shame. This is where it may benefit to focus on a proficiency in perception for at least one of your characters. On the subject of dialogue, decision-making, exploring the world is inspiration. This is quite a unique mechanic, and not all that obvious, but can be found in the menus or by pressing P. Inspiration is a party-wide resource, and it's limited. You get inspiration by completing actions that fit within a character's interests and the scope of their being, and allows for an opportunity to re-roll some skill checks. Use your inspiration sparingly. This isn't something to throw down on a small lockbox because you're a little bit frustrated you didn't get into it, because once it's gone, it's gone. Inspiration should be used for those big moments where you want to make a decision, you've rolled in a way that you're not happy with, so you want to give it another shot. Inspiration doesn't guarantee an outcome, but gives you a second chance to make your dreams come true. Alright, just a quick tip here. When you enter a new area, room, or place you just want to loot the hell out of, hold Alt. Holding Alt highlights lootable items in the immediate area. It doesn't highlight containers. These you'll need to look in yourself, but if there's a piece of cheese hiding under that table, holding Alt will highlight that for you. Alright, we touched on it earlier, but let's talk quickly about resting. Now, there are two types of rests in Baldur's Gate 3. You have your short rest and you have your long rest. It's important to understand what both of these do. And part of it is also slightly class specific. For example, a warlock will regenerate their spell slots on a short rest. However, that will not be the case for a wizard or any other class, in fact. Now, you can do 2 short rests in a day, which means you can do 2 short rests before you need to take a long rest. After that long rest, you can then take another 2 short rests. Short rests are a great way to restore some HP to the party, as well as spell slots to those who need them. However, if you've come through a combat encounter, a particularly challenging one, you've used all of your spells, this won't be enough and you'll need to go to camp. Now, going to camp can trigger some specific dialogue and cutscenes. You won't ever go to camp, or at least not in my experience, and be ambushed. Meaning, if you go to camp and you have no spell slots, your party is absolutely ragged, almost dead. You're not going to get attacked there, so you are safe. But you may run into something that takes you off the path you were following for a little while. Now, to complete a long rest, you require camp supplies, or food items. This is why it's important to pick up food items you find around the world. If you're worried about filling up your backpack with a bunch of sausage, a bunch of cheese, you can right-click on these items in your backpack, send to camp. They will appear in the camp in a chest. It's been stated that at full release, when you click on your bedroll, you'll have all these supplies available to you no matter where they are, so you don't need to worry about holding these on your person. After completing a long rest, you'll be ejected back out into the world where you started the rest. If you'd like to go to camp, you're able to travel to camp at any point in time with a waypoint. However, it's important to note if you travel in this way and then travel back out of camp, you'll have to travel to a waypoint. So if you're in the middle of a dungeon, think, oh shit, I left something in my chest, let me go back to camp, and then want to come back to exactly where you are, that doesn't work. You'd have to do another long rest to achieve that. There doesn't seem to be a limit to the amount of rests you can take. You're obviously limited by your supplies. There also doesn't seem to be a negative impact if you rest frequently. I often rest after a lot of my combat encounters because I love using my spells, even when they're a little unnecessary. And in tactician mode, I'm expecting I'll need to rest more frequently because I'll be using more spells and taking more damage. It's worth considering after a combat encounter. Has your party taken much damage? Have you used many spell slots? Can you just get away with doing a simple short rest, or do you need to take a long rest? Alright, and to round out this video, one final note on crafting. So again, I mentioned earlier, we don't have a lot of information on crafting, but we know that we'll be able to craft various things through the game. Now, from what I've seen, this looks like special arrows, traps, possibly elixirs. We'll have to explore this more on release, and I will be doing a full guide on it as well. As you move around the environment, you'll find various herbs, plants, etc. that you can pick up, as well as various things from animals. And crafting will be a great option for you rangers out there if you want to make special arrows, or you rogues and you want to make special traps or bombs. I think that's where that'll really shine. And possibly even a necessity on the higher difficulty levels. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how I can augment my playstyle. Now, if you're looking for another couple of tips around this, I have completed 2 previous videos. These are on my channel. I'm happy for you to check them out. I will include links in well, obviously I'm very happy if you want to check them out. I will include links in the description for these if you'd like to see them. If you have made it through the entire 40 minutes that has been this video, thank you very much. I really appreciate the support. I hope this has helped you in some way. If you think I've missed something from this, please let me know. I'm happy to add additional information in the comments description. Let me know, or complete another video in the future. I am so stoked for this game. We're just a little over 2 weeks away, 2.5 weeks. This is going to be absolutely insane. If you guys want to check me out when I stream this game, please do subscribe, hit the little bell notification, you'll see when I'm live. I stream both here on YouTube and multi-stream onto Twitch as well. Alright guys, thank you so much again, and I will see you guys in the next one.